The rope bit into Cordelia's wrists as the auctioneer's voice boomed across the dusty square. "What am I bid for this fine specimen? Strong back can work the fields?" Da-da-da-da-da. She kept her chin high despite the tears threatening to spill, watching the crowd of leering faces as they shouted numbers like she was livestock. 500, called a tobacco-stained merchant. 750, countered a rancher with cruel eyes. Cordelia's heart hammered against her ribs. 3 months ago, she'd been teaching children in Boston. Orphaned and penniless after her father's debts surfaced, she found herself on this god-forsaken auction block in Millhaven, Kansas, sold to pay what he owed. $1,000. The voice cut through the crowd like a blade deep, steady, commanding. Cordelia's gaze snapped to its source, a tall cowboy leaning against a hitching post, his weathered hat tilted low over steel-gray eyes. Unlike the others, he wasn't leering. He watched her with something that looked almost like respect. 1,000 to the cowboy. The auctioneer's gavel slammed down before anyone could counter. Sold. Rough hands shoved Cordelia forward. Her legs trembled as she stumbled toward her new owner, expecting the worst. But when she reached him, he simply untied her bonds and draped his leather jacket over her torn dress. "Name's Maverick Calloway," he said quietly, his voice gentler than she'd expected. "I'm taking you home." Home. The word felt foreign on her tongue. He helped her onto his horse, settling behind her with careful distance. "My ranch. You'll be safe there." There as they rode through the prairie, Cordelia couldn't understand why this stranger had spent his life savings on her freedom. The wind carried the scent of wildflowers, and something else, hope, perhaps. For the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe. "Why?" she finally whispered. Maverick was quiet for so long, she thought he wouldn't answer. "Then my sister was sold like that once. Different town, different auction block. I was too young, too poor to stop it." His voice hardened. "Swore I'd never let it happen again if I could prevent it." The Calloway Ranch appeared as the sun began its descent. Modest spread with a white farmhouse and barns surrounded by rolling pastures. It wasn't grand, but it felt like sanctuary. "You don't owe me anything," Maverick said as he helped her down. "You're free to leave whenever you want. But if you stay, I could use help with the horses. Lost my ranch hand last month." Cordelia studied his face, searching for deception, but finding only sincerity. What would people say? An unmarried woman living here? Let them talk. He tipped his hat. Your reputation matters more than their gossip. As they walked toward the house, Cordelia noticed how he kept respectful distance. How he'd given her his jacket without being asked. How he'd bought her freedom and expected nothing in return. In Boston, she'd known gentlemen who were far less gentle than this cowboy. Maverick? She stopped at the porch steps. "Yes, ma'am." The word seemed inadequate for what he'd done, but his small smile told her he understood. That night, lying in the guest room he'd prepared, Cordelia stared out at the star-scattered sky and wondered if maybe, just maybe, her nightmare was finally over. Dawn broke with the sound of Maverick chopping wood outside Cordelia's window. She dressed quickly in the simple clothes he'd left for her. Prairie skirt and cotton blouse that fit surprisingly well, and ventured downstairs to find coffee brewing and biscuits warming in the oven. "Sleep well?" Maverick asked, not looking. Up from the eggs, he was scrambling. There was something endearing about this rough cowboy cooking breakfast. His movements careful and practiced. "Better than I have in months." She poured herself coffee, inhaling the rich aroma. "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." He finally met her eyes. "You've been through hell. The least I can do is make sure you eat." After breakfast, he showed her around the property. The horses took to her immediately, nuzzling her palms and following her along the fence. Maverick watched with growing amazement as she calmed his most skittish mare with gentle words and patient touches. "You have a gift," he said. "My father bred horses before." She trailed off, old pain flickering across her features. "Before the debts?" She nodded. "He was a good man who made bad choices. Gambling mostly. When he died, I discovered everything was mortgaged. Creditors came calling, and I had nothing left to give but myself. Maverick's jaw tightened. No one should have to pay for someone else's mistakes like that. Yet here we are. She stroked the mare's neck, though I'm beginning to think maybe it wasn't all bad luck. Their eyes met over the horse's back, and something electric passed between them. Cordelia felt her cheeks warm and looked away, but not before catching Maverick's slight smile. The days fell into an easy rhythm. Cordelia proved invaluable with the horses, gentling the wild ones and training the young colts with remarkable skill. Maverick found himself looking forward to their shared meals, their evening conversations on the porch as fireflies danced in the gathering dusk. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Cordelia asked, "What happened to your sister?" Maverick was quiet for a long moment. Evangeline. "She was 16 when our parents died in a twister. I was 14, couldn't provide for us both. When the bank came for the farm they took her too, said she'd work off the property debt." His hands clenched into fists. "By the time I was old enough and had money to track her down, she'd died of fever in some wealthy man's house. Worked to death." Cordelia reached over and covered his hand with hers. "I'm sorry, that's why I couldn't let them take you. Couldn't stand there and watch another woman get sold like cattle." He turned his hand, palm up, intertwining their fingers. "But staying here with you, it's not about guilt anymore." "What's it about?" He studied her face in the dying light, her intelligent green eyes, the determined set of her chin, the way she tilted her head when listening. "It's about how you make coffee strong enough to wake the dead. How you sing to the horses when you think no one's listening. How you've made this place feel like a home instead of just a house." Cordelia's breath caught. "Maverick, ... I know it's soon. I know you've been through more than anyone should bear. But Cordelia, I think I'm falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between them like a prayer. Cordelia felt her heart racing, not with fear this time, but with hope. "I think," she whispered, "I might be falling in love with you too." When he kissed her, gentle and sweet under the emerging stars, Cordelia knew she was finally, truly home. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Cordelia was grooming horses when she heard wagon wheels crunching on gravel. Through the barn door she watched 3 men dismount, 2 rough-looking cowboys and a well-dressed gentleman with cold eyes she recognized with a chill. Beauregard, Thornfield, the tobacco merchant who'd bid on her at the auction. "Calloway," Thornfield's voice carried across the yard. "We need to talk." Maverick emerged from the house, his hand resting casually on his gun belt. "Thornfield, what brings you to my ranch?" "Woman you bought. I'm here to make you an offer, $1,500 for her. More than you paid." Cordelia's blood turned to ice. Behind Thornfield, his men spread out, hands near their weapons. "She's not for sale," Maverick said flatly. "Everything's for sale at the right price. 2,000. You deaf? She's not property." Thornfield's laugh was ugly. "You always were naive, Calloway. That girl belongs to whoever can pay for her. Her father owed me money till I have papers that say she's mine by right. Papers can burn." Maverick stepped forward, and Cordelia saw the dangerous glint in his eyes she'd heard whispered about in town. The reason most men didn't cross Maverick Calloway twice? Now, Thornfield pulled out a folded document. "It's all legal and proper. Judge Wickham signed off on it himself. I own her debts, which means I own her." Cordelia stepped out of the barn, her chin high despite her trembling hands. "Go with you. You don't have a choice, sweetheart." One of Thornfield's men started toward her. The sound of Maverick's gun clearing leather stopped him cold. "Take another step and lose your foot. You're outnumbered, Calloway." "Maybe, but I'm faster." Maverick's voice was deadly calm. "I promise you'll be the first to die." Thornfield's face darkened. "You can't protect her forever. I'll be back with the sheriff. You do that. But understand this." Maverick stepped closer, his gun still drawn. "That woman is under my protection. Anyone who tries to harm her answers to me, and I don't miss." After the men left, Cordelia sank onto the porch steps, shaking. Maverick holstered his gun and knelt beside her. "Need to leave," she whispered. "If he has papers?" "No." Maverick's voice was firm. We don't run from bullies. But the sheriff is Judge Wickham's brother-in-law, and in Thornfield's pocket. Maverick took her hands. But there's another way. What way? He met her eyes. Steadily marry me. Cordelia's heart stopped. What? If you're my wife, those papers become worthless. A man can't own another man's wife. The law won't allow it. He paused. I know it's not how either of us imagined, but yes. What? Yes. I'll marry you. She squeezed his hands. Not just to escape Thornfield, 'cause I love you, Maverick Calloway. I love your gentle strength, your fierce protection, the way you see me as a person worth saving. Relief flooded his features. Then we'd better hurry. Preacher Morrison lives in town, but there's traveling preacher comes through Brother Augustine. He should be at the widow Faulkner's place today. They saddled horses quickly, Cordelia's hands shaking with nerves and excitement. As they rode toward town, she couldn't help but think how strange life was. Yesterday, she'd been a rescued auction prize. Today, she'd be a bride. Having second thoughts? Maverick asked, noticing her expression. About marrying you? Never, she smiled. I was just thinking about how sometimes the worst things lead to the best things. Getting sold at auction was the worst thing. No, she said softly. The worst thing was believing I'd never be free again. The best thing was you proving me wrong. As they crested the hill overlooking Millhaven, Cordelia saw their future stretching ahead, uncertain, perhaps, but bright with promise. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. Brother Augustine proved to be a weathered man with kind eyes and a booming laugh. When Maverick explained their situation, the preacher's expression grew serious. Thornfield, eh? That man's been a blight on this county for years. He studied Cordelia carefully. You sure about this, miss? Marriage shouldn't be entered into lightly, even for protection, I'm sure Cordelia said firmly. I love him. Augustine's face softened. Well then, that changes everything. Love's the best reason of all. He clapped his hands together. Widow Faulkner will need witnesses. Mrs. Faulkner, a spry woman with silver hair, bustled about gathering flowers from her garden. How romantic? A sunset wedding. She pressed a bouquet of wildflowers into Cordelia's hands. Every bride needs flowers. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, a small crowd gathered in the widow's parlor. Word had spread quickly through town the mysterious woman Maverick had saved was getting married, and folks were curious. Cordelia smoothed her simple blue dress, wishing she had something finer for her wedding day. But when Maverick appeared in his best shirt and pants, his hair combed back, and his eyes shining with love, she felt beautiful. Dearly beloved Brother Augustine began, his voice carrying easily through the room. We are gathered here in the sight of God to witness the union of Maverick Calloway and Cordelia. Ashford, she supplied quietly. Her father's name, the only thing of value he'd left her? Cordelia Ashford, in holy matrimony. The ceremony was simple, but heartfelt. When Maverick slipped his mother's ring, a simple gold band he'd carried in his pocket for years onto her finger, Cordelia's eyes filled with tears. Do you, Maverick, take Cordelia to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, until death? Do you part? I do. His voice was steady. Sure. And do you, Cordelia, take Maverick to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, until death do you part? I do. The words came out strong and clear. Then by the power vested in me by God in the territory of Kansas, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Maverick, you may kiss your bride. When Maverick's lips met hers, a small crowd erupted in cheers. Mrs. Faulkner wiped her eyes with her apron, declaring it the most romantic thing she'd ever seen. But their celebration was short-lived. Through the window, Cordelia spotted riders approaching Thornfield and Sheriff Briggs, along with several armed men. Maverick, she whispered, gripping his arm. He followed her gaze, and his jaw tightened. Stay calm. We're married now, legally and properly. Front door without knocking, his face red with fury. Calloway, Where is she? Where is who? Maverick moved protectively in front of Cordelia. Don't play games. That woman belongs to me. Brother Augustine stepped forward, holding up the marriage certificate. I'm afraid you're mistaken, sir. Mrs. Reed. Calloway belongs to no one but herself and God. She's a married woman now. Sheriff Briggs examined the certificate, his face troubled. This looks legitimate, Thornfield. I don't care if it's legitimate. I have prior claim. Actually, came a new voice from the doorway. You don't. Everyone turned to see Judge Morrison, the honest judge from the next county over, entering with his own paperwork. I've been investigating Mr. Thornfield's business practices. Debt papers he's been using are fraudulent. Signatures are forged, including mine. Thornfield's face went white. That's impossible, is it? I'd never signed any papers transferring Miss Ashford's debts to you. In fact, her father's debts were cleared by the sale of his property. She owed nothing to anyone. Judge Morrison's eyes were cold, which means that auction was illegal. Kidnapping, in fact. The sheriff's hand moved to his gun. Beauregard, Thornfield, you're under arrest. As Thornfield was led away in chains, still protesting his innocence, Cordelia sagged against Maverick. In relief, it was over. She was truly free. While Brother Augustine chuckled, this has been the most exciting wedding I've ever performed. Mrs. Faulkner clapped her hands, and the most romantic. Let's have cake. The Calloway Ranch had never felt more like home than it did that first night as a married couple. Maverick carried Cordelia over the threshold as tradition demanded, both of them laughing as he nearly stumbled on the front step. Some entrance, Cordelia teased, smoothing her wedding dress. Better with horses than doorways, he admitted, setting her down gently. They stood in the parlor, suddenly shy with each other, despite everything they'd shared. The enormity of what they'd done, married within hours of a proposal born from necessity, settled between them. Are you hungry? Maverick asked. I could make something. Maverick Cordelia took his hands. We don't have to pretend this is a normal wedding night. I know we married for protection. Is that what you think? He cupped her face gently. Cordelia, I didn't marry you just to save you from Thornfield. I married you because I can't imagine my life without you in it, even though we've only known each other a few weeks. Sometimes the heart knows what the mind takes months to figure. Out. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. I knew the moment I saw you on that auction block, not just that I had to save you, but that you were going to change my life completely. Cordelia felt tears prick her eyes. I knew too. When you put your jacket around me, when you spoke so gently. ... I thought, this man has a good heart, and now I know you have the best heart of any man I've ever met. Their second kiss, as husband and wife, was deeper than their first, full of promise and new beginnings. When they broke apart, Maverick rested his forehead against hers. We'll take this slow, he murmured. Whatever you need, however long it takes for you to feel safe and sure. I already feel safe with you, she smiled. And I'm sure about us. Over the following weeks, they settled into married life with surprising ease. Cordelia threw herself into improving the ranch, planting a vegetable garden, teaching the horses new tricks, even helping Maverick with the accounts. She had a head for numbers that amazed him. Your father taught you business too? He asked one evening, as she balanced his ledgers with neat precision. Mother did, actually. She said a woman should never depend entirely on others for security. Cordelia's smile was sad. If only she'd lived to teach father the same lesson. She sounds like a wise woman. She would have loved you. She always said to judge a man by how he treats those who can do nothing for him. Cordelia looked up from the ledgers. You saved me when I had nothing to offer in return. You had everything to offer. You just didn't know it yet. Their love deepened with each passing day. Maverick would find excuses to touch her hand when she passed him coffee. Cordelia would linger in the barn when he was working, just to hear his voice. They talked late into the nights, sharing stories of their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. I used to think I'd never trust a man again, Cordelia confessed one night as they sat on the porch swing he'd built for her. After what your father's debts cost you? After what happened before the auction? Her voice grew quiet. The man who was supposed to help me? He tried to. Said if I was nice to him, maybe I wouldn't have to be sold. Maverick's hands clenched into fists. What was his name? It doesn't matter now. I got away, obviously. But it made me think all men were just looking to take advantage. She leaned against his shoulder. You proved me wrong. I'll spend the rest of my life proving you're right to trust me. I know you will. 1 month after their wedding, as autumn painted the prairie in gold and red, Cordelia made an announcement that surprised them both. I think I'm with child. Maverick nearly dropped the coffee cup he was washing. You think? I'm certain, actually. I've been feeling sick in the mornings, and she blushed. I know the signs. He crossed the kitchen in 2 strides and swept her into his arms, spinning her around until she laughed and begged him to stop. Are you happy? She asked when he set her down. Happy doesn't begin to cover it. He kissed her soundly. A baby. Our baby. As winter approached, they received news that made their happiness complete. Judge Morrison visited to inform them that Thornfield had been sentenced to 10 years in prison for fraud and human trafficking. His entire operation had been exposed, and dozens of illegally sold people had been freed. You started something important, the judge told them. Your courage in standing up to him gave others the strength to come forward. That night, lying in their bed with Cordelia's head on his chest and his hand resting on her still flat belly, Maverick marveled at how completely his life had changed. Any regrets? Cordelia asked sleepily. Only one? She lifted her head, concerned. What? I regret not buying you at that auction sooner. Could have saved us both some trouble. Aldelia laughed and settled back against him. Maybe we needed the trouble to appreciate the peace. Spring brought new life to the Calloway Ranch in more ways than one. Cordelia's pregnancy blossomed along with her garden, and Maverick had never seen her more beautiful than when she stood among the wildflowers, one hand resting on her rounded belly as she watched their horses graze. He's active today, she said as Maverick approached, his arms full of fence posts. He or she, I just have a feeling. She took his dusty hand and placed it where she felt the baby moving. There, did you feel that? Maverick's eyes widened as a tiny foot pushed against his palm. Strong little one. Takes after the father. Their peaceful morning was interrupted by the sound of approaching riders. But these weren't the threatening visitors they'd grown accustomed to. These were travelers with loaded wagons and hopeful faces. Excuse me, called the lead rider, a woman with graying hair and determined eyes. Are you the Calloways? The ones who stood up to Thornfield? We are, Maverick replied cautiously. What can we do for you? My name is Helena Thornberry. These are my friends, all of us were. Affected by Thornfield's operation, some of us were sold like your wife, others had family members taken. She gestured to the group behind her. We've been traveling, looking for a place to start over. Folks in town said you might understand. Cordelia stepped forward, her heart immediately going out to these people who'd suffered as she had. You're all welcome here. We don't want charity, Helena said quickly. We're prepared to work, to pay our way. Some of us have skills farming, carpentry, sewing. We just need a chance. Maverick looked at his wife, seeing the compassion shining in her eyes. They'd talked about expanding the ranch, maybe taking in some help. The land south of here is for sale. Good water, decent soil. If you're serious about staying, we could all go in together. Make it a proper community. A community. Lena's voice was hopeful. Why not? Cordelia said, warming to the idea. We could build houses, start a school, make a place where people who've lost everything can build something new. Over the following months, their dream took shape. The land was purchased collectively, and soon the sound of hammers and saws echoed across the prairie as homes rose from the earth. Maverick proved to be a natural leader, organizing work crews and mediating disputes with fairness and wisdom. Cordelia, despite her advancing pregnancy, threw herself into establishing the school. She taught the children in the mornings and the adults who wanted to learn reading and writing in the evenings. You're doing too much, Maverick fretted as he watched her organize books one evening. I'm doing exactly what I'm meant to do. She straightened with a hand pressed to her lower back. These people need hope, Maverick. Education gives them that. Their baby arrived on a warm June evening, delivered by Helena, who had experience as a midwife. As Maverick held his daughter for the first time, a perfect little girl with Cordelia's green eyes and his stubborn chin, he felt his heart expand beyond anything he'd thought possible. What should we name her? Cordelia asked, exhausted but radiant. Hope, Maverick said without hesitation. Hope Evangeline Calloway, after your sister, and after what you brought to my life, to all our lives. Word of their growing community spread, and soon they had visitors from as far as California, people who'd heard about the town where former victims had built something beautiful together. A proper doctor arrived, then a blacksmith, then a preacher who decided to stay permanently. "We need a name for this place," Helena said one evening, as the whole community gathered for their weekly supper. "We can't keep calling it the settlement." "What about Haven?" suggested one of the younger men. "Like a safe haven." "Redemption," offered another. But it was little Hope, babbling in her father's arms, who seemed to settle the matter. As if sensing the importance of the moment, she looked around at all the faces surrounding her and smiled the biggest smile they'd ever seen. "New Dawn, Cordelia," said softly. "That's what we should call it. New Dawn, Kansas." The vote was unanimous, as autumn painted the prairie gold again. Maverick stood on the porch of their expanded house, watching children play in the yard while their parents worked. In the fields and shops of New Dawn, Cordelia joined him, Hope sleeping peacefully in her arms. "Any regrets now?" she asked, echoing her question from their early days. "Not a single one." He wrapped his arms around his wife and daughter. "Though I do have one confession." "Oh, I lied about why I bought you at that auction." Cordelia stiffened. "Slightly, what do you mean?" Said it was because of what happened to Evangeline, and that was part of it. But the real reason was simpler. He turned her to face him. "Took one look at you standing there, so brave and proud despite everything. And I knew I was looking at the woman I was going to love for the rest of my life." "That's impossible. You couldn't have known, couldn't I?" He smiled. "My heart knew, even if my head took a while to catch up." Cordelia shook her head, but she was smiling too. "You're either the most romantic man alive or the biggest fool." "Can't." "I'd be both." 5 years later, New Dawn had grown into a proper town with a main street, a church, a school that Cordelia still ran, and even a small newspaper. The Calloway Ranch remained at its heart, but now it was just one part of a thriving community that had become a symbol of hope throughout Kansas. Maverick served as the unofficial mayor, a role he'd never sought but had grown into naturally. His fairness and quiet strength made him the person everyone turned to when disputes arose or decisions needed to be made. "Papa, tell us the story," demanded 5-year-old Hope as she climbed onto Maverick's lap. Around her gathered her younger brother Justice, barely 3, and the newest addition to the family, twin girls they'd named Faith and Grace, now walking unsteadily around the parlor. "Which story?" Maverick asked, though he knew perfectly well which one she meant. "The story of how you and Mama met." Cordelia looked up from her sewing, smiling. Even after all these years, the children never tired of hearing about the auction, the wedding, and the founding of New Dawn. She'd softened some of the harsher details for young ears, but the core remained the same. "Well," Maverick began, settling Hope more comfortably on his lap while Justice scrambled up beside them. "It was a hot day in summer, and your mama was in trouble. ... As he told the familiar tale, Cordelia watched her husband's face in the lamplight. Time had added some gray to his hair and lines around his eyes, but he was still the man who'd risked everything to save a stranger. Still the man who saw the best in people and fought for those who couldn't fight for themselves. And then what happened? Hope prompted when he paused. "Then we got married by sunset, just like fairy tales say you should, and lived happily ever after," Justice added solemnly. "Even happier than ever after," Maverick confirmed, winking at Cordelia. After the children were tucked into bed, Maverick and Cordelia walked out onto their porch. The town spread before them, lights twinkling in windows where families shared their evening meals. In the distance, they could hear Helena's grandson practicing his fiddle and the sound of laughter from the saloon that served only coffee and pie. "Mrs. Henderson wants to write our story for her newspaper," Cordelia mentioned. "She thinks it would inspire other communities." "What did you tell her?" "I told her our story isn't finished yet." Maverick smiled and pulled her close. "What do you think the next chapter holds?" "I don't know, but I know we'll write it together." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the night sounds of the prairie they both loved. Then Cordelia spoke again, her voice thoughtful. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't been at that auction?" No, Maverick said firmly, because I was meant to be there. Everything in my life led to that moment. Losing my parents, losing Evangeline, working alone for years. It all prepared me to recognize love when I saw it standing on that auction block. Even if I was terrified and probably looked awful, especially then, beauty is easy to love. Courage. That's what takes real strength to recognize and appreciate. Cordelia leaned against his shoulder, still marveling at how this man could make her feel so cherished with just a few words. I love you, Maverick Calloway. I love you too, Mrs. Calloway. As if summoned by their conversation, Hope appeared in the doorway in her nightgown. I can't sleep. Bad dreams, Cordelia asked, opening her arms. No good dreams, I dreamed I was getting married like you and Papa did, with flowers and everything. Maverick chuckled. Not for many years yet, little one, no. But I want to marry someone just like Papa. Someone who saves people and builds towns and tells good stories. That's a tall order, Cordelia said, smoothing her daughter's hair. Mama says if you know what you want, you can find it. And if you don't find it, you can build it yourself. Maverick exchanged a look with his wife over their daughter's head. Your mama is a very wise woman. That's why you married her. One of many reasons. Later, after Hope had been settled back in bed, Maverick and Cordelia remained on the porch, neither willing to break the spell of the perfect evening. Do you think she'll really find someone like you? Cordelia asked. She'll find someone perfect. For her, just like you found someone perfect for you. Modest as always? Not modest. Just grateful. He turned to face her fully. Every day I wake up grateful that I was at that auction. Grateful that I had enough money to bid. Grateful that you said yes when I asked you to marry me, even though I said yes for all the wrong reasons. You said yes for exactly the right reasons. You trusted me when you had no reason to trust anyone. You chose love over fear. And you built this life with me, day by day, choice by choice. Cordelia felt tears prick her eyes. After all these years, he could still move her to tears with his simple honesty. Come here, she whispered, and when he leaned down, she kissed him with all the love and gratitude she felt. Thank you. For what? For seeing me. For saving me. For loving me enough to let me save you back. Oh, you did save me. I was just a lonely cowboy before you came along. Now I'm a husband, a father, a leader in this community we built together. You made me the man I was meant to be. As they stood, they're holding each other under the vast Kansas sky, surrounded by the town they'd helped create and filled with love for the family they'd built. Both Maverick and Cordelia knew that some stories really do end with happily ever after, and sometimes, if you're very lucky, that's just the beginning.